Welcome back to the Cornbread and Kool-Aid podcast. My name is Demetrius. It's good to be back. We've been on a hiatus for a little bit. Real life sometimes intervenes in this fun little thing we do, this podcast. Um, but we are back, starting our fifth season of the Cornbread and Kool-Aid podcast. Crazy to think we've done 4 seasons, and this is the start of our fifth season. We are excited to be back. We are clearly, when you take a hiatus, you have to remember how to do this. And I ran into glitches of every kind. But we acknowledge in every broadcast the godfather of the Cornbread and Kool-Aid podcast, the super producer extraordinaire, Mr. Mike Ward, as always. Um, Mike's the guy, he always will be. My name is Demetrius. I'm glad to be back. This is a podcast for fans of the Detroit Lions. So if you're not a fan of the Lions, yeah, I appreciate you being here. I'm not sure how much you're going to enjoy this, but if you know me or you are a fan of the Lions, I like to think there are all kinds of different perspectives, and mine is just one. But today, this is the best time of the year, right? Not, there's the old joke that my Packer friend Chris will always say, we never win, so the draft is our Super Bowl, whatever. I just happen to believe these 3 days, 27th, 28th, 29th, are the best 3 days of the year. The business of football is fantastic. Particularly this year, it is unique and interesting because I've said it a lot, but we're good this year. I'm a fan who does the we thing. So if you're one of those guys who doesn't like that, too bad. This is my team. I've been a fan of this team for 45 years now, and I don't have a problem. I'm gonna say we. I'm gonna say us. The reason it's called Cornbread and Kool-Aid is exactly that. I'm a team friendly guy. I'm not the guy who's going to call sports radio in the afternoon and try and get somebody fired or bitch about every play. I don't do that. I don't do that. I'm an optimist by nature as a human being, and it is only perpetuated more as it relates to this football team. So today is about the offseason, right? We're going to talk what they've done so far in free agency. I'm going to talk about Brad Holmes. I readily admit I have an unnatural love for Brad Holmes. I've I've not denied it, but I think there's 2 years of data that support it. And then I'm going to do this draft simulator thing and do a few scenarios, 3 or 4 scenarios of what the draft could look like. It's it's so hard to predict what they can do. And there's everybody in the world. There's 100 podcasts. No, there's 1 million podcasts. There's 1,000 Lions podcasts, and you can listen to all of them or watch all of them. And if you're listening or watching this one, I appreciate it. But it's hard to do. They've got 5 of the top 81 picks. They could move around, change position. They could draft straight up. But once you get through the first 3 or 4, there's no way to predict the rest. But that's okay. That's what we do. That's what the fun is. And I'm going to try to do it anyway. So we have a pretty straightforward structure. We call it 3 and out, right? I generally pick 3 topics. Sometimes somebody on the Twitter feed. Now I have the Twitter feed up in case you don't know. If you see me looking up, someone on Twitter is commenting about the podcast or one of my opinions, which I welcome. I don't know that I'm going to respond to all of them, but I welcome. And they're about 50-50. There's good ones, there's bad ones. None of that really bothers me. So to me, this is just a podcast of just a regular Lions fan who happens to love the team. I like to get on and talk about it. The people who have stayed with us through 4 years, I appreciate it. The people who have been looking because of the hiatus, wondering what was going on. I'm back now, so I hope you enjoy it. So um, here's the thing with where we are in the offseason, right? Brad Holmes did a lot of work positioning the Lions. I felt like it was really smart work the first 2 years. But when you look at how a team builds, like team building in general, there's really 3 avenues, right? There's free agency, there are trades, and there's the draft. And trades we've talked a lot about in the last couple of years. We talked about it with Stafford, the trade that kind of set all this up this year. We talked about the Hawkinson trade. Even back in the early days of the podcast, we had a full podcast about the Darius Slay trade, right? Which still looks good on paper. I'm not a fan of the Bob Quinn, Matt Patricia era, but um, you couldn't pay a 29-year-old cornerback 18 million, whatever. So the offseason, the 2 parts we're going to talk about today really are obviously free agency, what they've done in free agency, because that informs the draft. What they did in free agency is going to have a big impact of what they do next weekend. So when we look at it, as we came out of last season, as they came out of last season, I'll try and correct myself on that. We knew what the weaknesses were. Like, we as fans, people who watch the team closely, we understood what the weaknesses were. It was obvious, right? They had the last ranked defense in the league, largely because of the early weeks. They were so atrocious. They actually played better, but statistically couldn't really pull the nose up. So defense is what we thought, right? So for me, I'll tell you what I thought. To me, it was you can never have enough pass rushers. I'm of the belief that if you can have an elite pass rushing unit, you dictate the football game. But the back end, because of injury and poor play, corner and safety, the back end was struggling. I am not someone who believes the linebacker position is as bad as others. I never get on here and tell you believe everything I say. My opinions are right. I'm just giving you an opinion. Watch all the Lions podcasts and see what everybody thinks. My opinions are informed largely about by my own reading, my cornbread and Kool-Aid philosophy. I'm always team positive. You'll see that. And things I talk to other Lions fans about, things I hear even on sports radio. As much as I will bash people who call into sports talk radio, and I will, make no mistake, I will, because I can. um, that informs a lot of the opinions that I have. So this offseason, the key signings to me were Cam Sutton and David Montgomery, right? The cornerback from Pittsburgh and the running back from the Bears. I think that I could do a podcast on what happened with Jamal Williams. My short version of that is simple. I think the Lions made an offer to Jamal, an offer they felt was competitive and fit what they want to do. Jamal, his agent, his family, someone within his circle said, after the season you had, which was very good, you can get more on the open market. Let's test the market. So he made a decision to test the market. The Lions never agreed with him or made some kind of arrangement that you go out, see what you can get, and come back to us. That's not what they did. Why? Because that's not smart. Brad Holmes is a lot of things. Unintelligent doesn't appear to be one of them, right? So when he decided to go test the market and go talk to other teams, they went to their next option. And what they saw was, I don't even know if this was their second option. Maybe this was their first option all along. I know what they saw in David Montgomery is a versatile back who can do a lot of things that fit within their scheme. And when they put together the offer for Montgomery, he accepted the offer. Problem solved. Check. Nothing against you, Jamal, because fairness or disrespect, as he said in his New Orleans press conference, they made you an offer. And it turns out it was competitive offer. Why? Because you took less money to go to New Orleans. Now, you can have the argument about less money, whether it's 1 year or what's guaranteed. That's all well and good. At minimum, what the Lions offered Jamal was competitive. Jamal decided to go see what he could get somewhere else. And I guess he's fine in New Orleans. I guess he's happy. I don't like that he said the Lions disrespected him, because I don't think that's true. David Montgomery's an upgrade, in my opinion. But the reality is the biggest move is on the back end of the defense. With Cam Sutton, who signed a 3-year deal, and Emmanuel Mosley, who's a prove it 1 year, $6 million, coming off injury. And some of those work, some of those don't. Tyrell Williams didn't work. Brashard Perriman didn't work. Some of them work, some of them don't, right? Kaminsky might be a version of one that worked. But with Mosley and Sutton, I was happy. And then a couple Sundays ago, I'm getting ready for bed, and the scroll says they signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Now I'm thinking, okay, you have fixed the secondary. C.J. can play multiple roles there, and now you have flexibility. If Mosley comes back healthy and plays, which legitimate concern, if Mosley will stay healthy, that's fine. But that's why you get a 1 year, $6 million prove-it deal, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't hurt. And that's as important as getting it right every time, because you're not going to get it right every time. And sometimes, whether it's a draft like St. Brown in the 4th or Malcolm Rodriguez in the 6th, you nail it. Sometimes you don't. With, some would say, Anzarike, for example. I don't think that book's closed yet, personally, but some people do. But when you have drafted Aleem McNeil, you feel good about Aleem, and I think Aleem's a solid player, B+, really good pick. You can take a shot on Anzarike, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't hurt. And I think that's what really good decision makers do. They make decisions that sometimes pay off big, but the ones that don't pay off don't cripple you. And I think Brad Holmes has demonstrated a really good ability to do that. So I think with the 3 corners and the Montgomery signing, you were already solid. I think Glasgow shores you up at right guard if Vitai's not healthy. I think Marvin Jones, solid, considering the suspensions, which they already knew about. Smart signing, good dude in the room, a pro's pro, catches the football, which should be the number one thing on the job description for a wide receiver is to catch the football. So I mean, I'm not saying Marvin Jones is a difference maker, but I'm also not in that camp of people who think, oh no, JMO's missing 6 games, we're screwed. That's some overreaction sports talk radio nonsense. They had the number 7 or 8 offense in the league last year, largely without Jamison Williams. Now I understand the concept that, but if you have him, now you might be the third or fourth best, which is absolutely true. It's 6 games, it's third of the season. I get it. But I don't think they're going to all of a sudden be in the bottom half in offense in the league because Jamison Williams is out. I think it's a much bigger conversation about his decision making and maturity, or even a bigger decision about were they trained properly, which I'm not going to do the whole suspension thing. You guys can do root for radio on that. I just don't think the Jamison Williams suspension is that big a deal. I do like Marvin Jones Jr. as a guy. When he was here before, I thought he was outstanding. I think he's getting older, but he still catches the ball. He runs good routes, and he's great in the room. So I just don't think you drop that much. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's still the guy. I've always liked what we get from Josh Reynolds. I think having Marvin in the room, and oh, by the way, you can draft somebody. I'm not worried about the receiver room. Right. Glasgow is, I think, a subtle, really good signing because Evan Brown was a big loss. And I think that Glasgow mitigates the loss of Evan Brown with a guy who can play multiple spots. And again, you got 5 of the top 81 picks. You can draft a guard, bridge him to either be the right guard, protect if you don't want to pay Jonah Jackson later. The flexibility in what they have. I think bringing Badgley back was good too. I like Badgley. So I like what they did, right? Bringing guys back. Isaiah Buggs played well, stout up front. Him and McNeil, and when you add somebody, because you're going to add somebody, people may or may not like Alex Anzalone. I like him. He started all 17 games. He led the team in tackles. I think Anzalone is a guy that they like. I think he knows the system because he's worked with those guys in New Orleans. I think he's good in the room. I think Anzalone might not pop off the screen. He might not think he's a superstar, and that's fine, but the league can't be all superstars. Sometimes there's just really good, solid players. I think that's what Anzalone is. Kaminsky was a good guy to bring back. I think Matt Nelson was a good guy to bring back. Quietly, Jalen Reeves-Maybin came back after spending the year in Houston. Good special teams guy, good character guy. So I like what they did bringing their own guys back, and I like the additions. I think it was focused on smart moves, prove-it deals. I love them because guys earn their money, right? They clearly improved the back end of the defense. I don't think anybody can argue. Backup quarterback might still be a problem. I don't think it's as big a deal as most people. That's not true. It's a big deal. It's a big deal because they're competitive enough now that if Goff were to go down for a game or two, you can't sacrifice those games. So back in the past, it would be like if Stafford gets hurt, it doesn't matter. We're screwed anyway. It's not the case now. And I'm a Goff guy. But if Goff goes down for, say, 2 games is a big deal. 2 games now in this scenario could mean winning the division or not, which is odd to say, talking about something we haven't done in 30 years. But I do believe that's where they are. But I think these moves, the way they've gone about them, and just managing the cap well, they only have like 17 million in dead cap money. That sounds like a lot. Well, it is a lot. It's probably middle of the pack. But there are teams that have 30, 40, 50 million in dead money. That really hampers what you could do flexibility wise, but they still have the third most cap space. So the idea that they can't go out and make another move June 1st, there's still guys out there now. There'll be guys available at June 1st because a lot of roster bonuses and different kinds of bonuses are structured around still being on the roster June 1st. That's why we talk about that date a lot. There'll be June 1st cuts and they'll have money. So if they go through, and oh, by the way, they've got 5 of the top 81 picks. So you're going to fill a lot of these in the draft, whether you move or not. I don't see the Lions coming out of this draft with any less than 4 contributing players at any number of roles. And some of it is just how the board falls. Although I'm going to do some simulations later, predicting the draft is just really difficult. I don't know why guys do it. You have so little control. Guys are projecting who the Lions are going to draft at 18, much less 48 or 55. You have no idea what's going to happen. So I know that they know. What I know is Brad Holmes is really good at his job, right? And so I'm going to segue right into Brad Holmes. So one of the things that Lions fans know maybe not. Uh, one of the things that I believe, some Lions fans know, some don't, is that the Lions, until 2 years ago, in my opinion, have never gotten right the most critical position in the organization. There are people out there who think it's about the owner. The owner's last name is Ford, or in this case, the owner's maiden name is Ford, and they'll never win as long as a Ford owns the team because the Fords don't. Okay, Fords only care about money, and but okay, I think that's nonsense. And if you believe it, you can believe it. Cool. I don't want to talk to you. So, and you probably won't like the balance of this podcast. I don't think that's it. I did a podcast, I don't know, 3 years ago maybe, when Bob Quinn was really destroying this team. The most important position in a football organization is whatever they call it, president of football operations, general manager. It's the role that Brad Holmes holds now. And a quick history lesson: the Lions have never gotten that right. And it doesn't mean that Mr. Ford or his wife were bad people, because they tried everything. Mr. Ford tried his buddy way back in the day. Russ Thomas was his friend. You could trust him. So he thought, okay, that didn't work for a number of reasons. I was really young, but I've read about it. Then he tried to put a finance guy in it, right? Because the salary cap was a big deal. And I will never badmouth Chuck Schmidt, because quite frankly, those are the golden years. The Chuck Schmidt years were the golden years of Lions football, and we could do that. Then everybody said, hey, you need a football guy running your football team. So Mr. Ford hired Matt Millen. I will not talk about that guy. No disrespect. So Mr. Ford tried every variation that you can think of. And then Mrs. Ford hired Mayhew, because Martin Mayhew's very smart, but he worked for Millen, so he was kind of stained. And I don't know if he really, he had a chance. He made two really bad mistakes that you never get past. Go back and look at the Lions 2012 draft, and look at the guy who got selected after Eric Ebron. His name's Aaron Donald, and he could have been a Lion, but Martin Mayhew selected Eric Ebron. Mayhew couldn't overcome those two mistakes, right? So then Mrs. Ford, Martha Firestone Ford, decided, I'm going to try a different approach. I'm gonna consult. I'm gonna get a consultant, a universally respected football guy, and I'm going to tell him, vet a bunch of candidates, send me 3 GMs that I can pick from. And Ernie Accorsi, who I have no issue with Ernie Accorsi, I think he did the job he was asked to do. He vetted a few people, came back. One of the names on the list was Bob Quinn. New England tree, blah, blah, blah. Mrs. Ford hired Bob Quinn. Bob Quinn made the mistake of very early on deciding that Matt Patricia was going to be his guy. So even after Jim Caldwell went, I'm going to say 9-7, and made the playoffs, he fired him. He said 9-7 wasn't good enough. Maybe they didn't make the playoffs. 9-7 wasn't good enough. He came to the podium and said 9-7 wasn't good enough. That's his Aaron Donald, Eric Ebron. That's his Aaron. The moment he stood at the podium when they fired Jim Caldwell and said 9-7 isn't good enough, because he proceeded to hire Matt Patricia, and they didn't sniff 9-7. They 9-7 was a pipe dream. So he had handcuffed himself to Matt Patricia, and that statement cost both of them their jobs. So now we get to 2 days after Thanksgiving 2020, and Sheila Ford Hamp, and I won't call her Sheila Ford Hamp, because I just think that is what the guys who want to make statements about the Ford family do. Her name's Sheila Hamp. We're not friends, but I'm a fan, so I'm just going to call her Sheila. Hopefully she doesn't care. I don't think she'll ever know. But Sheila has a Zoom press conference, right? And I remember watching it. And in that, she used one word about 5, 6 times: collaboration or collaborative, some variation on collaboration, right? So I was like, okay, I just want her to mean what she says. And in my own work or business that I've experienced, my thought process is always have a strategy, execute the strategy. There are cases where the strategy is good and the execution's bad. There are cases where the strategy is bad and the execution of that crappy strategy goes exactly like it should, and it ends the way you predict it would end. I think that what I heard from her, that was my first exposure to Sheila, and I was impressed. But then through a series of events, she lived up to it. They put together a team of people. Um, Mark Disner, who's a longtime, well-respected guy within the organization. They got the ex-AD at Michigan State, Mark Hollis, Barry Sanders, Chris Spielman, Rod Graves. They put together a consortium, right? I don't know if that's the right word, But they put together a group of people and they interviewed minimum a dozen people. I want to say interviewed. I heard literally a dozen names attached to the GM search. At the same time, they're looking at coaches. And people were saying stuff like that doesn't make sense. A GM should hire their coach, blah, blah, blah. No. If you have a strategy and you have a culture that you want to build, you can do both. And that's what they did, because I think they were already pretty much on to Dan Campbell as they decided Brad Holmes. But if both guys understand the culture, understand what we're trying to build here, and both guys fit what we're looking for, they should be able to work together. And I've seen in 2 years no evidence that these two guys don't respect each other and work really well together. So that brings us to Brad Holmes. It is the most important position in any organization. And my feeling is, if you are someone who wants to make the SOL, forward sell the team, nonsense conversations like that, you should stop, because Sheila is not making decisions the way her father or her mom did. She made all decisions differently. See, collaboration seems to be the thing. They all work together. And so the old school hierarchy is not what they're doing. It doesn't seem to be what she's doing. And by all accounts, it's working. I see tremendous evidence that it's working. And you can say they've not won anything yet. They haven't made the playoffs yet. I didn't say it was finished. I said working, meaning it's still in progress, right? So I think that when you look at the collaborative way that they do things, the most impressive thing, the thing I like the most, is the working relationship I see between Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. I think even with the tough things where, I thought Anthony Lynn was a good hire, but midway through the season, Dan Campbell realized it didn't fit. It didn't fit the culture. It didn't fit what they wanted to be. His play calling as the OC didn't fit what they wanted to do. And he took over play calling, and in as classy a way as they could, they moved on from Anthony Lynn at the end of the first season. Similar thing with the defensive backs coach, Aubrey Pleasant, during this past season. They are committed to a philosophy. They are committed to a strategy. And so one of the reasons I did all that was, when I see things they do, when I hear people say they should do this, they should do that, they should trade for Lamar, right? And that one just blew my mind, right? I listen to sports radio, guys are calling in, and for them, it was this idea that Lamar's just way better. Lamar's a superstar and golf's not. And I will never become involved in a discussion suggesting Jared Goff is more talented than Lamar Jackson. I won't do that. What I would say is that the Lions can be successful with Jared Goff as their quarterback. And then people go, no, they can't. There's no way. There was just know-it-alls who have an agenda and they don't see anything else. Because I saw it. I saw it 8 of the last 10 games last year. I see what they're doing, and Jared Goff is just playing really good football. But it doesn't fit their narrative. So they benchmark 2019 MVP Lamar and say, that's who Lamar is. And they benchmark Jared Goff that got traded from the Rams. Sean McVay didn't like him. That's who Jared Goff is, and they ignore all this other evidence, like the last 20 games, where Jared Goff has played really good football. Lamar Jackson's missed a bunch of time because of injury. And none of this is me bashing Lamar, because I can tell you that I would not make the move without bashing Lamar, because what I would tell you is what it would take to make the move. It would take cutting Jared Goff or trading him. What do you get back? I don't know. A second? Maybe? So let's say you get a second. Now you got a bunch of dead cap money. Dead cap money you could use to sign someone else. Let's say that's $12 million. You know what that is? That's a really good corner. That's a really good linebacker. That's a really good offensive lineman. That's dead cap money. And you're going to give up a 1 next year? You got to go 2 1s, right? So you're going to give up 6 and 18? Or you're going to give up 6 and a 1 next year and keep 18? So you're going to give up, let's say 18 and a 1 next year. 18 could be Bijan Robinson. A 1 next year, who knows? So you're going to give up 12 or 14 million in dead cap money, which could be a really good player. You're going to give up Bijan. You're going to give up Goff. And you're going to give up a 1 next year for Lamar Jackson. And maybe a second round pick you get back for Goff. I don't do the move. Why? It's too much to pay. It's too much to pay. And I am not a person who believes that a quarterback that plays like Lamar Jackson has the shelf life of a guy who plays like Jared Goff. Jared Goff will still be a really effective quarterback for another 3 to 5 years, in my opinion. I don't see any evidence that says he shouldn't. He won't be. And the people who are saying he will, it just fits their agenda. Jared Goff is playing really good football. And people, the Lions can't have nice things. The Lions have nice things. They have a really good quarterback. You don't want to pay him. You want to pay Lamar 51, but you don't want to pay Goff 42. You know what that $9 million is? A really good linebacker, a really good corner, right? The difference is not just how good is Goff versus how good is Lamar. And it's certainly not how good is 2019 Lamar, which is what everyone's benchmarking, versus 2020 Goff, who the Rams traded. It's 2023 Lamar, who's been injured, who's missed time, versus 2023 Jared Goff, who's one of the 7 best quarterbacks in the league over the last 20 games. That conversation is bizarre. But my point was really that's not consistent with how Brad Holmes has done business. Now, I'm not saying they won't trade up because they traded up last year. They might package 6 and 18 and move to 3 and get Will Anderson. Maybe. But later, you're going to see I did a simulator and Will Anderson was on the board at 6. So do you have to do that? The beauty is they have all these options. They have the flexibility with all these picks to do anything. But Brad Holmes has this is I often in real life and on the podcast use that old Bill Parcells quote, right? If you want me to make dinner, let me buy the groceries. Brad Holmes has 2 like shopping sprees. So in March, he went shopping, right? But he grabbed one of those little buggies with the little thing on the top and little, right? The small buggy. He grabbed one of those in March. That's when he got C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Cam Sutton, David Montgomery, Emmanuel Mosley. He did the small shopping, right, with the little cart. 27, 28, 29, that's the big cart. That's when you go get the big cart. This is him going shopping. Dinner is September when they hit the field. This is Brad Holmes buying the groceries, right? And he has demonstrated a really strong propensity to pick good players, right? His first draft, Sewell's a Pro Bowler, St. Brown's a Pro Bowler. You can feel what you want about Onwuzurike. I would say incomplete because he just can't stay healthy, and maybe that's a problem. Maybe he never stays healthy, but he was a 2nd-round pick for it. But then you got Aleem McNeil in the 3rd round, who's a solid B player no matter what. Derek Barnes, we had a lot of hope for. I don't know if that book's close. Barnes might be close. Last year, can't say anything about last year's draft other than, wow. What do you say about last year's draft? Last year's draft was simple. Aiden, no-brainer, home run, number 1, right? Pascal, the book is still open. How do we feel about JMO? Do I want to jump down the Jameson Williams rabbit hole right now? Okay, I'm a guy who believes that there is a tremendous degree of hypocrisy in the gambling rule, right? At an NFL level, that they've decided to get in bed with gambling sites and cash those checks and advertise and do all that stuff, and then create, at minimum, unclear rules to the players because they're relying staff members. There are obviously a bunch of there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect. The guys who bet on football, they're just not smart. I don't know either of them personally. That's a no-brainer. Anybody with a set of brain cells knows, oh, I can't bet on NFL games. That's just silly. The guys who got pinched for betting at a facility and staff members that got pinched for betting at the facility, there's a degree of training and understanding the rules that might play into this. Now, I don't know why you can't just go home. I don't know why that app's on your phone. I don't know why you can't just go home. Make your bets at home. Now, but could I see a deal where Jameson Williams has just finished his workout and somebody brings up the Alabama-Georgia game and he wants to, I think I'm going to put a bet on that. What's the line on that game? Pulls out his phone. He's still in the weight room. He just got out of the shower. But you know where he is? He's in Allen Park, Michigan in an NFL facility. Still on him. Make better decisions. I get it. I don't know that I love that rule. I don't know that I love that rule. If you're cashing the checks and you're a partner, tell me why it matters whether Jameson Williams goes to DraftKings and makes that bet in the locker room in Allen Park or on his couch, other than some facade of NFL integrity. Because if he's making a bet on an Alabama-Georgia game sitting in the meeting room, and you want to tell me, hey, pay attention in the meeting, I'll buy that. But I don't understand that. And maybe there's more to come, so I didn't want to jump down the rabbit hole. Now, here's the thing. We're not going to miss him that much. Those people are like, oh, my God, they're calling the sports radio the other day. Oh, my God, this is SOL. They're doomed. Shut up. It's crazy. They had the 7th ranked offense in the league, and Jameson Williams made 2 plays all year. They'll be fine. Now, adding him, does it make you a 3rd or 4th bet? Possibly. It makes you one of the better offenses in the league. I don't disagree with that. But this idea that they're screwed because Jameis suspended 6-8, no, I don't buy that. Jameis, would they like to have Jameson Williams? Sure. But without Chark and JMO, the question of can they stretch the field? I think they'll be fine. I think Marvin Jones Jr. helps. He's not Jameson Williams, but he's a pro and he does really good work. So this whole overreaction to the JMO suspension is kind of funny to me. I don't they'll be fine. It's a third of the season, I get it, but he was not the reason they were the number 7 offense in the league last year because he only made 2 plays, right? Now you could say the defense had to account for him. I don't know. But back to that draft. Aiden, home run. JMO, incomplete. We don't know. We can raise maturity questions. I am still a Josh Pascal fan. I think when Josh Pascal came back, he played well. And I think people are sleeping on what a healthy Josh Pascal can be. Kirby Joseph might be a starter at safety by the end of the year. I think in Mitchell, you have a contributing tight end, if not a starter. There are those who want to go draft a tight end. You can just to strengthen the room. I don't think you need to. But then when you go in the 6th round and you get Malcolm Rodriguez and James Houston, those are just home runs. And all of that was to say, I don't know Brad Holmes personally. I'd love to. I believe I have enough evidence that says what he has to do this weekend, the shopping trip with the big grocery cart, he's good at that. He showed me he's really good at that. So with 5 of the top 81, and then I think they got 2 5s and 2 6s, I fully expect to get 4 contributors in a project, right? 4 meaningful contributing players, 2 stars, 2 really good players, a project that could blow up, right? Ika, the defensive tackle from Baylor, maybe he's sitting there at 55. He might be there at 81, something like that, maybe. So this draft has the potential to set this team up for the next decade. Whether they do something crazy, not crazy, something aggressive, get up to 3 and get Will Anderson, he changes your organization. No, he doesn't. He continues what you're doing with your organization, right? So I think that I don't know why we would expect anything less than 3 to 5 contributors. And who knows? Brad Holmes could take 152 and 159 in the 5th round or 183 and 194 in the 6th and find a starter. He's done it. He's done that kind of stuff. So it's got to be super exciting. It's super exciting for me because I think Sheila has done this right. I think they found the right guy in Brad Holmes. He has demonstrated that he knows what he's doing, and they have 5 of the top 81. That's a really good opportunity to continue the journey of where the club's going. So obviously, all the other years where I've said I think this is the year, yeah, I mean it this year. I meant it every other year, but I really mean it this year. So let's do a little bit of what if drafting, right? So Pro Football Focus, and in case you don't know, you can go online. PFF has a draft simulator. It's awesome, by the way. You could just go in. So I decided to do a few of these, and I'll run through them pretty quick because I won't take up too much time. But you can be the Lions. You can do as many rounds as you want, and if you subscribe, which I was already a subscriber, you can make trades in some. So I did 4. 2 without doing trades. I'm just picking at the 5 spots, just the top 3 rounds, the 6, 18, 48, 55, and 81. Two where I didn't make trades. 1 where I made what I think is a reasonable trade. See what that looks like, and then 1 where I just went crazy. I just decided to have some fun. So I'm gonna go through them. So the first one was the best one and the easiest one because Will Anderson fell to 6. And so what I decided to do was fill what I perceive as needs. So Will Anderson was there at 6, which was a great move. At 18, I had a choice of a couple of corners. I went with Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. So now you have a cost certain corner, somebody you got under contract for 4 or 5 with the option year if you want young, because Sutton's under contract for 3, but pretty much everybody else is 1-year deals. So you need cost certainty at corner and talent. And I think at 18, whether it's Banks or Forbes or Porter, you will have a shot to get cost certainty at corner. At 48, I decided to strengthen the tight end room, and I took a guy named Laporta out of Iowa. Solid guy, good tight end, makes that room better. Then at 55, for those of you who are concerned about the JMO thing, Jalen Hyatt, the wide receiver out of Tennessee, was there. And then at 81, Siaka Ika, the big giant defensive tackle from Baylor, was there. That, if they did that, if that worked out, I would love that. I won't say it's the best. It's pretty damn close. It's pretty damn close. With that, you get possibly the best player in the draft with Anderson. You get, like I said, a solid cost certain corner. You make the wide receiver room stronger. You make the tight end room stronger, and you get a big giant defensive lineman that, if he reaches his potential, can be an anchor. He can be a Haloti Nada type, right? So that would be fantastic in the no trade policy. With the no trade policy, that's a really good situation, and I think that it addresses everything except linebacker, right? But you still have free agent money and backup quarterback. You have free agent money to address that, right? But Ika has the potential to be a Amon-Ra St. Brown type home run at 81 if he's there, right? Second one, didn't love it as much. It fell differently, but I had a no trade rule on myself, so I just didn't like what was at 6. So I took Bijan at 6, which I don't know that you need to address the running back room, but I think Bijan Robinson's a very good player, and he's high on the board. I think if Will Anderson's not there, if Jalen Carter's not there, and in this case both of them were gone, and you have to pick at 6, I would not balk at that. So at 18, the corner out of Maryland, Deontay Banks, was there. That's right about where he slotted. He's in that group with so I think Witherspoon and Gonzalez are rated higher than most, but then I think Porter, Banks, Forbes, a bunch of guys fall into the second group. And a lot of it is just how much do the Lions like one guy versus another. 48, I love Jack Campbell, the linebacker out of Iowa. I think he improves the linebacker room immediately. This one, you address linebacker. I think Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin is the selection at 55, and then Chandler Zavala at 81. I think in Benton, the things I've read in his profile were long arms, excellent upper body strength, and they talked about leverage versus nose tackles. I think that's a guy you plug into that room, and he brings something with Kaminsky, who can play inside and outside, Elaine McNeil, Isaiah Buggs. You have a nice rotation of interior defensive linemen. Um, Zavala might be a little more of a project. He's 6'3", 320-ish, big dude, right? But first team all ACC at left guard. So maybe you can move him around. Maybe you sort of work him in to be a depth guy at right guard. Maybe you drop him behind Jonah and prepare for you have to pay Jonah Jackson at some point. And maybe you want to, maybe you don't. But that's at 81. That's a solid draft. I like Jack Campbell a lot, and I think Bijan makes your running back room extraordinary. So that wouldn't kill me. I wouldn't mind that one, right? So the third one I did, I allowed for trades. And so I traded 6 to the Titans for 11, 41, and 72. Now, this is just a trade where you get more capital. Now you have 7 of the top 81 picks, right? Instead of 5 of the top 81. And I believe it works out because at 11, still took Bijan Robinson, who I took at 6 earlier in the no trades allowed. And then at 18, Kalijah Cansey's there. So you've addressed defensive tackle and running back. At 41, the TCU guard Steve Avila is there. I think he's a top-rated guard in the draft. 41 you got from Tennessee in the trade. 48, I go with Josh Downs, the wide receiver out of North Carolina. Again, you just protection in the wide receiver room. I don't think JMO is like a maturity risk. I think every incident is separate. There's no connection. Other people see connections. I don't see connections. So then I think the corner out of Miami, Tyreek Stevenson at 55, and at 81, Hodge Tomlin out of TCU, and then at 72, the other pick from Tennessee, you take an edge rusher out of Wisconsin, Nick Herbig. So I think in this one, you still didn't address linebacker. I don't know that you need to as much as other people. This is the scenario I'd be fine with. I think you get value for the asset because you ended up getting Bijan at 11 when you were going to take him at 6. And in addition to that, you get Avila at 41 and you get the edge rusher out of Wisconsin at 72. So you move back 5 spots, got the guy you were going to take at 6 anyway, and got 2 other really good players. That is how you use the asset, right? And all this depends on what happens, right? This is a scenario where obviously Anderson and Carter were gone. We haven't even talked Carter that much. Um, that's fine. And so I did one more, and I call it Crazy Town. This is the one where I'm just building assets, right? So I traded 6 to the Patriots for 14, 46, and 76. Then I traded 14 to the Commanders and moved back to 16. And I also got 47 and 97. So now, as I start picking, 16, I've got 16, 18, 46, 47, and 48, 55, 76, and 97. So in the first 3 rounds of this draft, you've got 8 picks. The simulator might have just let me do some crazy nonsense, and the salary cap might not be able to support drafting 8 players in the first 3 rounds. But if that situation were to occur, guess what? Still got Bijan at 16. So remember 2 drafts ago when I couldn't trade, I took Bijan at 6. Then I made a trade in the second one and got him at 11. In this draft, Bijan's on the board at 16. Says a lot about what the world thinks of Bijan. But in this one, if I can get Bijan at 16 and Cansey again at 18, I've addressed 2 positions I really care about. I could take Laporta, the tight end we liked before, at 46. I can get Tariq Stevenson, the corner we liked, at 47. And I get the linebacker out of Arkansas, Drew Sanders, at 48. You just addressed running back, defensive tackle, tight end, corner, and linebacker. And then 55, the edge rusher, Tui Tuapoloto. I'm not going to even worry about that. The edge rusher out of USC at 55. Degree of a project, but he can rush the passer. Then you assuage your wide receiver concerns at 76 and take Nathaniel Dell out of Houston. And then you pick a project interior defensive guy at 97 and Kobe Turner out of Wake Forest. This is what Mr. Trade Down, who I am, would love. You get 8 players in the top 97. You have now put cost certainty into your salary cap because you have a corner who can likely play. You have a linebacker who can probably play. You got a tight end in the room, and you've got a stud at interior defensive line in Cansey and a game-breaking superstar at running back, which allows you to do whatever you want with DeAndre Swift. And I'm not one who says move Swift, but if you do something like this and you get Bijan later, I wouldn't be mad at it. I wouldn't be mad at it. But with this trade down scenario, you just added a bunch of young, talented players. Um, and oh, by the way, in the first trade, I also got a second round pick from New England. So you pretty much address every need on your board, on your depth chart. You pick up a second next year. And this is just the first 3 rounds. Still got 2 5s and 2 6s. And for Brad Holmes, that's not something you sneeze at. Brad Holmes can find special teams guys. He can find guys who can play back in those rounds. But as you can see through those 4 mock drafts, it could be all over the board. They could go straight picking, do that first one, which I really loved, and end up with a nice haul, 5 really good players in the top 3 rounds. And if you look at that and you say, wait, Will Anderson falls to 6, which I just don't think is going to happen, but the simulator let me do it. But if I tell you you're going to get Will Anderson and Joey Porter, and then later in the second, you're going to get Jalen Hyatt in case you're worried about JMO, and you get Siaka Ika, the project, at 81, even if Laporta doesn't work out at 48, that's a great draft. But I am the guy who says get value for the asset. So of all of them, I like my crazy town fourth one with the 2 trades, and you end up with 8 players in the top 97, and 6 of whom can all probably contribute year 1. The beauty is Brad Holmes is really good at this job, and they have capital to work with. So if you're not excited, if you're a Lions fan and you're not excited about next weekend, I don't know what to tell you. I will tell you again what cornbread and Kool-Aid means. I'm all about this football team. I'm not the guy who's going to call in the sports radio and bitch about a 4th down call or whatever. I care about them winning and losing. And more importantly, at a high level, is the team moving in the right direction? And from that day, 2 days after Thanksgiving in 2020, and I give credit to Sheila. I'm the guy who will call and praise an owner who's doing the job right. And I think Sheila's doing a great job. And that guy, that fan, that dude who says SOL and Fords will never win, and that guy, he'll never do that. His pride won't let him. The reality is, if you look at what she's done since she started making decisions for the team, tell me where she missed. Did she miss with the vetting process that resulted in Brad Holmes? I don't think so. Did she miss with Dan Campbell? Where's the miss? Because whatever you think, it appears that philosophy, that strategy was a good strategy, and it certainly appears they're executing that strategy well. So I appreciate those of you who listened. I hope you enjoyed it. Talked a little Brad Holmes, talk some off season, talk some draft. It's an exciting time. Obviously, I'm going to be right back at it in a week or so and do the post draft. We're going to break down whatever it is they actually did. What does it mean for the season? Where do they stand? What other issues do they need to address? And just any opportunity to talk Lions football is what it's all about, what I'm here for. So again, back from the hiatus, glad to be back. Looking forward to this season. It's probably the most exciting season in 25, 30 years. There were a couple in the mid-teens where they were um, wild card type teams, but this this feels like all roads to the North Championship go through Allen Park, Michigan. This feels like there's going to be a home playoff game in January. This feels like a team that I don't care about hyperbole. I will say it. I think they're the third best team in the NFC. Like as we sit now, pre-draft. I won't. You can't disrespect the Eagles and what they've done. They lost some things. The 49ers did what they did, and their quarterback situation was unsettled. If there might be an organic improvement there, just under center, maybe not. But after those two teams, I'll have a discussion with you about any other team. If you want to talk to me about Seattle, we can have that conversation. And I don't feel bad about it. I feel like I can make points. If you want to talk about Dallas, right? The Giants don't scare me. Nobody in the South scares me. So if you want to have those conversations, fine. But I feel very comfortable making the statement that the Lions are probably the third best team in the NFC. Now that I will acknowledge the AFC is heavy, but it's not about that. It's about the NFC. Third best team in the NFC means you got a shot to go to the Super Bowl. And if a Lions 49ers game is in Detroit, Michigan, I like our chances. If a Lions Eagle game is in Detroit, Michigan, I like our chances. And what's it going to take to do that? I don't know, 13-5. I'm sorry, 13-4, 13-4 maybe. But I saw who they're going to play, and yeah, I ate a big old piece of cornbread and drank a bucket of blue Kool-Aid and said they can go 13-4. I'm not backing off of it. If you're listening, you know me. You know how I get down. You know what this podcast is about. So I think that they're at a time where it's very exciting for us as fans. Um, to be a fan of this team right now is very good. So again, thank you for listening. Always, thank you to the super producer extraordinaire, Mike Ward. We'll be back in about a week or so to do a post draft, and then we're going to start dropping sort of a once a week cadence as we get toward more free agent signings June 1st. There's just going to probably be a mini camp in May, and then we're going to blink, man, and they're going to be showing up for training camp. So we're kicking off season 5 of the podcast. Very excited. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks.